How's it going, everybody? My name's Dave Whipple and you're watching Bush Radical. Now the title of this video, I Almost Died. You've seen that a million times and it's clickbait. People put that on a video so you click on it. This isn't that kind of video. When I was 30 years old, I ended up in the hospital. Terrible stomach pains. I probably dropped 40 pounds that summer. It was the summer of 2006. And I was a wreck. At the doctor, I was diagnosed with having Crohn's disease. I was in constant pain. Couldn't hardly eat anything. Give me a terrible, terrible stomach ache. I'd have these pains that just literally doubled me over, just incapacitated me. And I fought that for 4.5 years of just being sick and feverish and not being able to eat, and everything I was prescribed by the doctor didn't work. Nothing worked. And I kept trying new stuff and nothing seemed to work. Finally, in 2008, I was in terrible condition. I ended up in an emergency surgery in Fairbanks Memorial Hospital. They gave me a 10% chance that I wouldn't survive the surgery. Well, I did survive the surgery, of course. And it turned out that what they thought they saw in the CAT scan wasn't as bad as it actually was. I had a bunch of scar tissue, small intestine type of stuff, just kind of pinching everything together. So it was like a scar tissue bowel obstruction. But it didn't change my diagnosis. I still continued to be treated as if I had Crohn's disease. By this time, I was pretty sure that wasn't the case. I had another couple years that were up and down. And then I really went downhill and I really started losing weight and I really couldn't eat. And, you know, I had a wife, I had 2 small kids at the time. We had a house I built while I was sick that took me twice as long to build as it should have. I was just miserable for 4.5 years, just miserable. And finally, the summer of 2010, I went downhill so far that they put me on an experimental drug called Cimzia. And it's for several things. It costs a fortune. It didn't work either. Finally, my wife sent me to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. It's kind of like a Hail Mary, kind of like a last-ditch effort. I was farther gone than I thought. You know, if you see the picture here, this is the only picture I have from that time that kind of really shows where I'm at. You can tell, you know, I'm terribly miserable at this point. When I checked into the Mayo Clinic, they weighed me in at 139 pounds. I'm 245. I'm 6'2". I'm nowhere near 139 pounds. And they put an NG tube in my nose. And I couldn't take it. It was panicky. I told them they'd have to take that out. I just demanded it. I'm like, you have to take that out. I can't tolerate it. It's kind of a panic-inducing situation. I told them to take it out. They did. They took it out. A few hours later, a doctor comes in and he says, we need to put that NG tube back in. I said, no, I'm not interested in that. And he said, you either have to have it or there's really nothing we can do for you. And you're to the point where all we can do is send you home. He's basically telling me, you know, you're done if we can't treat you the way we think we need to. Because I was to the point where I wasn't going to get better. So anyway, 7 days into my stay at the Mayo Clinic, I had a surgery that bypassed that whole section of my intestine that just wadded up with like a fibrotic scar tissue. Once again, not Crohn's type of stuff. It was more of a sclerosing mesenteritis. So if you've seen Alone, you've seen when I'm dealing with my wet black t-shirt, I've got this foot-long scar up my front. That's what that's from. Well, the surgery was rough, but it was successful. I spent another week in the Mayo Clinic and then I flew back to Fairbanks, Alaska. And I got to go home. on Thanksgiving Day. Brooke picked me up at the Best Western on Airport Way in Fairbanks, Alaska, Thanksgiving morning in a terrible ice storm. I actually got to go home on Thanksgiving Day and eat. And I hadn't been able to eat for like 4 years. Eating was just miserably painful. So to go from, there's nothing else we can do for you, you're done, to go from that to going home on Thanksgiving Day, food on the table, the kids happy to see you, a new lease on life. It was a crazy time. And I was that close. 4 years later, Brooke and I and the kids, we went and shot Yukon River Run with our friends Neil and Laurel Eklund for the National Geographic Channel. I would have never in a million years ever thought something like that would happen in my life. 2 years after that, Brooke and I went out and were involved with Alone on the History Channel. And I never, ever would have thought something like that would happen. I spent 4.5 years with very little hope. None of the treatment they gave me did anything to help my condition. It was actually a major surgery that saved my life. And I thank God every day that I got like a whole another 7 years, and hopefully more in the future. But I got a whole 7 years that I never expected to get. And amazing stuff has happened in those 7 years. And I'm so thankful to have that second chance to live a normal life and to be blessed in so many ways that I never saw coming. 7 years and 2 weeks ago, I was pretty much certain that I was not going to see my children grow up, that I wasn't going to see another year. And I was right. Without God's hand on the whole thing and the help I got from the Mayo Clinic, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be shooting this film. I wouldn't have, even worse than all that, I wouldn't have got to see my kids grow up. And now they're 12 and 14. So 7 years ago, you're talking 7 and 5. They probably wouldn't even remember who I was. I just wanted to tell you what I'm thankful for. And I wanted to share with everyone out there a story of coming back from the very edge and how I never saw that coming. I never envisioned getting deathly ill. When I was really sick, I couldn't hardly imagine being better. So if anybody out there is going through a rough time, is going through something that they just can't see the end of, they can't imagine that it's ever going to be over, that it's ever going to improve or get better, I was in that same spot. And while you're alive, there's always hope. There always is. And I didn't really know that at the time. But I learned that lesson. And I just wanted to pass that on to you. I hope that that story gives somebody more hope. My name's Dave Whipple, and you've been watching Bush Radical. And be radical, eh? Happy Thanksgiving.